and downs. It's more like a roller coaster, to be honest with you, because some days you're living large, man. Microsoft announces something cool, or they're doing something awesome for the fans, or at least you think it is, and I think those are fairly good days. And then you have days where, you know, stuff comes out or whatever, maybe behind the scenes, and you're looking into it, and it really just goes to show that Microsoft are kind of pricks and don't really care about anything but their bottom line, which is the same thing with pretty much every company, but Microsoft in particular, because they really only got into gaming to kind of dominate the living room and to kind of make money, you know. And it's like, I know it's all about money, but when you are focused solely on that, you know, a lot of the quality dips and things like that in some of the other areas. And so this is kind of, you know, unsettling. And Microsoft's past has really kind of not been kind to them, right? Because they say, oh, we learn from our mistakes. And, you know, when you look at the things that they've actually done, it's like they really haven't done that. So I'll give you a quick example. Like, remember the Xbox On documentary that Microsoft had? I think it came out in 2021, the 20-year anniversary of Xbox, and they're talking about how, you know, closing down Lionhead Studios, we really, you know, that was a mistake. We learned from that, you know, canceling games. We got to let studios kind of do what they do, and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And then what do? Just recently, I mean, they closed down the Hi-Fi Rush studio, Tango Gameworks, but luckily they got saved. They closed down the Redfall developer. I mean, at any point they could have canceled Redfall. They had to know it was steaming garbage. You know, but they closed them down. More recently, they closed down, of course, the Initiative, who in 7 years didn't get a single game out. You know, they canceled Everwild and the Perfect Dark game. And so, you know, they do all these things where they cancel these games and they close down these studios, but at the same point in time, they want everybody to believe that, you know, they've changed and they're doing things differently. And then, you know, it's the same thing with some of the internal stuff like Turn 10 Studios. Will we ever see a Forza Motorsport again? That's, you know, we don't even know because the communication isn't exactly there, but we do know that, like, the leadership for some reason is fairly bad, and for some reason the people that are running these things are constantly falling upwards. Like the woman at Rare who was like in charge of Everwild, now she's like in charge of like everybody in the UK, like the head of the division or whatever. Like, how do you go from not being able to get a game out in a decade to being in charge of every, like, make it make sense? Usually if you fail, they're not going to let you kind of continue to do that. So this was very, very interesting for sure. And to be 100% honest with you, I really feel like kind of what we're seeing here is of Microsoft's own volition. Like, Microsoft, they're so out of touch. I mean, they've got to realize exactly how out of touch they are, worse than Seymour Skinner.
Am I so out of touch? No. It's the children who are wrong.
So basically, I want to get into this bit of news, and, you know, it makes me sad that we didn't get to see more of this, but concept art and gameplay information from Xbox canceled Perfect Dark game has now been shared. The game was announced almost 6 years ago, but was officially canceled in July, and it almost was saved, but then was canceled again. So, you know, that just kind of goes to show how these things go. Internal documentation shows concept art for some of the game's locations, as well as gameplay details. The documentation refers to some concepts like a relentless system and a reward system, but goes into more detail on another concept, the adrenaline system. According to the description, this would have made adrenaline a finite resource which the players could have regenerated over time. Having adrenaline would have given the player various abilities such as healing, increasing damage dealt, and reducing damage taken. Other adrenaline features would have included slowing down time to dodge bullets, better aiming precision, and increased movement speed. So yeah, very interesting stuff. And trust me, the documents go like way deeper than that. And, you know, we saw kind of that vertical slice of what the game actually had to offer. And I admit, outside of, you know, the terrible looking Joy in a Dark model itself, I thought that the game looked fairly good and was very interested in seeing, you know, what they had to do, what they were actually going to be able to accomplish, and, you know, exactly what, you know, this was all all going to entail. I think most of us were expecting this game to come out next year. The funny thing is, if it's true that a new Forza Horizon game comes out, a new Halo, Gears E-Day, and Fable released next year, they didn't even need to release it next year. They could have held it off for a whole nother year and released it in 2027 sometime, or make it a launch title of the next generation. I mean, they had tons of stuff they could have done, and now, like, assuming they do launch a next generation, you know, if they don't have any games at launch, then I think, you know, it's clear that they are terrible at kind of managing these things. But I'm going to get into the rest of this in just 1 second. So real quick, I wanted to take a minute to say, if you're enjoying this video or any of the content on my channel, please offer a like, maybe even consider subscribing, share the video out, and comment at the very least. You know, I really put a lot of effort into the videos, and I do daily video game content, so if you're looking for something every single day, you can count on me. I try to do my best. I try to be fun yet informative, so if that's what you guys are into, I give my take on these videos, and, you know, I'm reliable like Old Faithful. So thank you guys so much for the support. So pretty much continuing on, you know, it doesn't really kind of look how, you know, you might think it would. So it's interesting. The documentation also refers to Season 1, implying the game may have been episodic, and includes concept arts for various eco-sci-fi locations set to be featured in the first season, including Cairo, Egypt. Perfect Dark, of course, a reboot of the classic spy shooter from developer Rare, was announced in 2020 and featured in last year's Xbox Summer Showcase. However, it was announced in July of this year that the game had been canceled and developer the initiative had been closed down, with Xbox Game Studios' Matt Booty saying the decision reflect, quote, a broader effort to adjust priorities and focus resources to set up our teams for greater success within a changing industry landscape. Basically, what Matt Booty does is he is unable to get games out the door. He's really kind of proven that he's kind of bad at that, and in my opinion, he sees what other companies are doing, the Sonys and Nintendos, and he's trying to emulate that, but he's worse than Homer Simpson when he tried to build his outdoor barbecue pit. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's one fine looking barbecue pit. Why doesn't mine look like that? Why must life be so hard? Why must I fail in every attempt at masonry?
You know, so at the end of the day, we don't know what could have come from this game, you know, pretty much anything, but I wish that it would have been something that we could have actually got to see a little bit more of, or maybe given them a little bit more chance. You know, a company that had already invested a large amount of money and time might as well have seen it through at this particular point. In a company-wide email announcing the closure of them, they also confirmed the cancellation of Rare's Everwild. It was claimed earlier in the month that Take-Two was reportedly in discussions to save Perfect Dark, but the negotiations collapsed over details of a potential deal, basically who would own the IP long term. You know, again, I think the IP has an interesting chance at life, but you've got to be able to you know, have people that can that are going to be allowed to work on it. So it was also reported that the collapse of talks between Microsoft and Take-Two and Crystal Dynamics resulted in an unspecified number of layoffs at Crystal Dynamics last month, as the studio had been co-developing the game alongside the initiative themselves. Like, again, really, it's a really kind of piss poor situation when these types of things happen. You know, I hope that we can see something come from you know, some of the other games. Like, I don't want to see, you know, State of Decay 3 canceled. I don't want to see, you know, some of these other games that we've seen already announced canceled. You know, I don't want to see Fable canceled, or, you know, it was bad enough they canceled stuff that we didn't even know really what it was. You know, you got John Romero's game canceled. You've got, you know, you had the Contraband canceled. It's like a large number, like 40% of the games that they've announced, like in the 2019 through 2022, were canceled. And, you know, it's really, or haven't come out yet, so it's really a bad situation. You know, Microsoft really idiotically canceling stuff makes no sense.
Yes, I'm afraid the brainless drones who run the network canceled our license.
Little joke there. I love that one. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of you hope that stuff doesn't continue to get canceled. That we'd like to see some of these things release. I would have liked to maybe even seen Perfect Dark release. It doesn't look like that was going to be the case. So no matter what happens, I'm not sure exactly where you guys stand on it. But yeah, it's just not a good situation all around. So hopefully the rest of the stuff comes out and no more studios have to suffer from closures. Thank you guys so much for watching. Rack 'em up. Grab